good with the shot on the goal!
Big goal for Ferris State. Make it a 3-1 game.
Great job by the Bulldogs to find a way to get it done.
Some people don't like it, but that's just how I am.
College sports is shifting. It's all about game experience.
I can't think of better people to be spending my time with.
We raise a family here, and it's something that's not seen in a lot of other schools.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of our summer collaboration spectacular. Brandon Work, Joe Nagy, Brody Kaiser here with you on Behind the Bulldogs, presented by our great friends at Bezos Digital. Fellas, we're back once again here for week number 2.
Yeah, we are back, and it's going to be a good episode because we got tennis on deck, and I cannot wait for it because also I've been looking forward to this. I like hanging out with you guys. I mean, I see you every day, Brody, since we live together, but, you know, still a fun time to hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great show. We'll get into men's and women's tennis, their results, the schedule, stats, and we'll look forward to next year. Even talk about some faces we think will have breakout campaigns upcoming for Coach Doran's team this next year. All that coming up. But first, we want to take the moment and thank our great friends at Bezos Digital. They offer so many services, guys. If you need help with digital in your business, you can trust them. Go to DezosDigital.com for more information. We're talking programmatic display, premium streaming, digital video, digital out of home, graphic design, video production. They can help you find out more. Once again, DezosDigital.com. But fellas, tennis time, men's and women's.
Let's do it.
We'll kind of cover both as we go on. We'll kind of hop back and forth. But we'll start with the men's team as they were the most recent competition hosting the regional round. Unfortunately, Monday just wasn't the best day for the guys losing to Grand Valley. That is definitely, don't get me wrong, the Lakers are a good team. They really are. And they made the regional for a reason. But that was a team we beat in the regular season 7-0. We know that team, Ferris-wise, could have played better. And the guys know they played better. And it was an unfortunate end. And obviously, if we would have continued it out, you're going to see 4-0 like we were down behind. We would have won probably the last 3 for sure. We were in 3 sets, and I believe all but 1 or 2 of the singles pairing. So when you look at that, it was a very competitive match. But it literally starts with the doubles. That's where this team grabs a lot of momentum. And you got to give Grand Valley credit because they really came out firing, and especially getting that momentum on their side here to face Ferris State. They knew they had to get it, and they got it. And unfortunately, Bulldogs sent home a little early this year.
Yeah, Dogs just didn't come out quite ready to go with enough emphasis as they needed in the doubles point. That was something Coach Doran mentioned after in the interview that he did post game. But he did feel like the players really settled in by the time that the singles match rolled around. And you did bring up a good point, Brandon, that the final score was 4-0, but that's not the way that match played out. Everything was extremely close. Even the doubles was close when the Dogs weren't playing super great tennis. But when they did start settling in and playing really good tennis in the singles, all those sets were super, super close. 1 to 2 point sets for the most part, if I'm remembering correctly, on 5 of the 6 courts, I believe. So it was absolutely spectacular tennis if you're just a neutral fan. But unfortunately for Bulldog fans, yeah, you wanted to see that team go a little bit further, especially considering how many seniors were on this team and how much effort they'd put in over the past couple of years. And because, it's that team from down south, Grand Valley, unfortunately did get to 4-0 and move on. But overall, just a terrific season for Mark Doran's squad on both sides. But the men with a little bit of an unfortunate result in the regional. But hosting the regional is no small feat, and that speaks to what they were able to do in the regular season.
Yeah, and especially speaking of that regular season, the GLIAC talking with Coach Doran in our interview earlier on this season he said that this was the most competitive that the GLIAC has been in a very long time on both sides, men and women. So for them to get that hosting and then as well as take it down in the GLIAC tournament, I mean, that's just a huge spot. But like you guys said, tough to have that end in the regional, but still you get to go. I think Wayne State's still going, aren't they?
Yeah, they won the regional, so they're in they're going to be in the Sweet 16 here coming up, I believe, this week. So
wild stuff.
Yeah, so we'll have to check in on them. But that's a great point that you made, Joe. I mean, we're talking 3 teams from the GLIAC on the men's side, and obviously the women's side is just as competitive too, in the top 50 in the country. So that just goes to show how much great tennis is being played in the GLIAC. Ferris State on the men's side. This is, of course, according to the Intercollegiate Tennis Association, finishing, I believe, 17th in the last rankings that we checked. Overall, overall there in the standings. Wayne State also, for those in reference, is 20, and Grand Valley, or as Brody alluded to, that team down south, 44th in the rankings as well. So, but especially when you look at the men's side, and we'll hop into the women's side here in just a minute too. I mean, talking about the GLIAC Tournament Championship, what an absolute thriller that was. You saw Jan's game-winning point on video. You can find that online at Ferris Athletics on social media as well. I mean, just capturing the emotion of that moment. I mean, it was coming down to the final pairing, win 4-3 over the Warriors, who are a very, very good team. And there's a reason that they won that regional. But I mean, for this team, taking care of business, 17-5 overall, undefeated in conference play. And we're seeing that year after year from Coach Doran's team. We're talking player of the year, team of the year honorees, plenty of the past couple of years. And it just goes to show that this depth of this team year after year is really uncomparable to a lot of these teams in the GLIAC, and that just goes to show the work that these individual athletes have done and how much team chemistry they've built over their time. Yeah, and you go back and look at the schedule, and I think this speaks to the team that you were just alluding to, Brandon, how they are able to play well together, and their individual results propelled the team, but a lot of 7-0s, a lot of 6-1s, games that weren't really that close that the Bulldogs just completely dominated. But then you get into April, Wayne State victory 4-3. Then you're right back on track with 6-1, 6-1, 4-0. And then Wayne State again, another 4-3 victory. And that was for the GLIAC Tournament Championship. You're talking two teams built to play indoor tennis, playing inside for the GLIAC Championship down to the final point. The only team that the Bulldogs had played really closely in the previous 2 months. And they were able to come out twice against that Warrior squad that is very, very talented. That was an incredible tennis match. Such a treat. And congratulations to Mark Dorn and the Bulldogs for pulling that one out, because just terrific. Yeah, absolutely. And the losses that this team here, and I'll let you go, Joe, here, but it's all good, brother. D1 teams, 2 of them, Western and Belmont, and then you're talking UIndy, who was the regional host overall in the Midwest, number 8 team in the nation at the time, number 2 in the entire nation in Flagler, the number 1 team in the nation, they play down in Florida, St. Leo, and then you're also talking Grand Valley, who's also in the mix as well. So those are only the 6 losses. They took care of business. You're absolutely right, Brody, and it just especially just goes to show that the competition that they play too, when they go down to Florida, I mean, they're playing Rollins as well. They're a ranked club and a really good ranked club too, and obviously they're playing a lot of these teams. It's a tough schedule, so they're taking care of business when those conference matches come into play, but they're also testing themselves, and that's something that especially they do very well with the program and just how they structure their schedule every year. Yeah, and the one tough thing too, especially kind of going through, because playing a sport like tennis in Michigan, you got to play inside pretty much the whole time. Then now in the regional, you have to move outside. You're also at Big Rapids at courts you don't really play at. That's a really tough thing to get over. And I mean, for Grand Valley, it still was a very close matchup that we were talking about. But that's one thing too to notice, is that it was a brand new situation, a spot where they haven't really played too much at, as well as kind of battling the elements too, instead of just being inside at the Racket Center. It's a tough thing to get over. It absolutely is. So we'll hop to the women's, and then we'll get kind of an individual players back on the men's side and then the women's side. Women's finishing 12-10. Obviously, as Joe mentioned, we talked to Coach Doran earlier on. You can find the interview in the feed below, wherever you're getting this show. I believe it's episode 26, 27, 28, somewhere in there. Ballpark. Somewhere in there. Yeah, so you can find that. And some really great stuff from Coach Doran as well, quote-wise, his story as well, becoming a coach. But 12-10, obviously not really standing out as far as a record that, jumps off the page like the men's side with 17 wins, only 6 losses. But you look especially at a lot of the teams they played, a lot of them ranked teams in the GLIAC. I mean, Wayne State certainly is the team that everybody was chasing. Grand Valley as well was in the mix. But they were really winning a lot of these close matches here when you look at the schedule. I mean, they're winning a lot of these 4-3 contests, and it just goes to show the grit and determination that this team has really been able to use, their resilience from especially battling back a couple injuries to a lot of top players over the last couple of years. But this team continues to fight with the depth they have. They've moved up and they've made some great results of it. And I think that just goes to show that the grit and determination we talked about on the men's team is at the same level, if not even higher, on the women's team, despite the record difference. Well, you talk about grit. How about this? They won 8 of their final 9 regular season matches. After starting the season, I believe it was 4-9. So they were in a position to be potentially the worst team in the GLIAC at one point in time. Then they start getting healthy. Then they start relying on some more of their seniors. They get some young players to step up, and boom, all of a sudden, they're an NCAA tournament team. And when we were watching the selection show a couple weeks ago, the players were just so excited because a season before, this was a team that wasn't even close to being in this position. They make the NCAA tournament. They draw Wayne State, who they're familiar with, team that beat them in the regular season. Unfortunately, they do go down in that first round as well, but just such an incredible
turnaround for this team after the spring break. And a lot of that too, Brandon, was because they play a difficult schedule just like the men. You were mentioning that, and that's a big reason as well why they were able to turn it around, rely on some of that experience. They were put in those difficult positions before, but just another terrific season on the women's side for tennis. And Coach Doran's got to be nothing but thrilled with the way this season went for the women as after that start to the year.
Yeah, and kind of keep going with that. If you look even like with preseason, near the start, it was a little bit different with some losses in a row. But after playing IUP in Findlay, the team didn't lose 2 in a row unless it was against Flagler and St. Leo down south, and then also at the end of the year. But you're still being able to see a lot of these times where they lose. I mean, you look back in April when they lost to Wayne State, they come back, win against Michigan Tech 6-1 after losing 6-1 just the previous week. So to be able to see that kind of bounce back behavior and be able to play that well, even after having, maybe not the hottest game before, that just speaks volumes in this team and being able to bounce back from those type of performances.
Yeah, and plenty of those names that you just mentioned, Joe, all top 20 teams, St. Leo, Flagler, Wayne State 21, the only GLIAC ranked team just outside that top 20. And unfortunately, they had to draw them twice after the GLIAC tournament, as well as having to play them in the regional. Terrible. Yeah. What in the world is up with these pairings? Well, that's not me. That's the NCAA selection committee. But I think one point, especially to note for this team, we'll get into the rosters here and the individual stats here in just a minute, but I think when you look at this team really moving forward, it's so great to have that baseline with that resilience that this team has shown. Because, we look at the records over the last couple of years for these teams, or especially for this program over the last couple of years with each team. 12-10, they finished this past year. They were 8-11, as you mentioned, the year before, Brody, and especially in 21-22, you saw that resilience again. They were 10-8 that season. So you're really seeing that baseline is built. And even though they have these records that are at or near 500, they're still in the contention every year for being an NCAA tournament team. That just goes to show how good and resilient that program is on the women's side, and the men's side gets credit with it as well. But especially on the women's side, we've seen it because they have done really well in the GLIAC over those couple of years. They've been having winning records, and especially against a conference that you mentioned, Joe, once again, that has continually gotten better on the tennis courts. But I think it just goes to show with this team, and especially the amount of recruits that continue to come in and the depth that is shown. You have a really good baseline that a lot of other teams really wish they could have consistently year after year.
Yeah, and one thing that really helps that is when you can go 9-2 at home.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like this team went 9-2 at home this past year, 6-1 in the conference, as Joe was talking about on the men's side, a very improved GLIAC. That's the same thing for the women's, okay? The GLIAC as a whole on both sides was very much improved this season. 6-1 in conference, 9-2 at home. I'm going to repeat those numbers because they're that impressive. And that gives you the baseline that you were talking about, Brandon, that you can go in there and you can win the games that you need to win down the stretch after having a rough start to your season to put yourself in a position to compete for not only the GLIAC tournament championship and the regular season championship, but also to be an NCAA tournament team. And that's exactly what this team was able to do this year behind some, like we talked about earlier, some rallying seniors and then some young players that really stepped up.
Yeah. For sure. And then especially if we kind of want to transition to the individual awards, it's easy when you have such an incredible, repertoire of guys and girls coming in here, because I think the whole entire lineup for the men's side won GLIAC honors, and then you get 4 with Sophie Morgan, Anna, and Maria for the women's side with GLIAC honors too. So it's not that hard to be a good team when you have such depth on it, but also for them just to play like that and then being able to get that type of recognition is just huge for the program.
Absolutely. So we'll jump back to men's now, as Joe alluded to, with the individual honorees. And we'll start with an obvious one, especially for this guy. We were watching him last year, and over those matches, we were like, man, this kid has potential. And boy, did he capture it. Asunge Ndumbe, the Intercollegiate Tennis Association's nationally awarded Most Improved Player of the Year award. That is a huge honor, and Asunge certainly deserves it for especially the hard work that he's put in. And I think just goes to show, going from the bottom of the singles flight pairings to the number one guy facing off against the top individuals in the entire nation. He finished top 20, I believe, right around in the individual category, which is a really impressive feat when you think about how many individuals are playing at the Division II level. I mean, so you got to really give credit to him and especially the rest of this team for continually improving year after year. And I mean, that's why they're a GLIAC championship team. But all GLIAC honorees from this past year, Kevin Kovacs, freshman of the year, and boy, did he step in huge after his older brother Eric ended up getting injured. Kevin gets slotted in at the number 6 spot and puts up a winning record. I mean, that's an incredible feat for him, especially stepping in. Ben Lordy as well as Asunge getting first team honorees in singles. Jan Kapul, as mentioned, Kevin Kovacs, Yannick Alexander-Mador, and Alessandro Santangelo, all second teamers. And then as well on the team side, Jan and Ben, first team in doubles play too. So, I mean, especially when you look at this team overall, every single player, doubles in singles, all with winning records, all consistently winning, and not only that, winning and being resilient, even in matches they're down, coming back. That's what really shows what championship programs are made of.
I think they were really able to rely on their experience this year. You talk about all those guys, Brandon, that you just listed, Yannick, Jan, Ben, and I guess those are the three seniors that were playing at the top of the lineup for the most part this season. And those guys just were so consistent. You know, they were basically guaranteed to win their singles points when they could. And then some of those other guys like Eric, unfortunately, did have that injury, but Kevin stepped up in such a big way. Those two guys are going to be huge pieces of this program moving forward. And then, of course, Asunge and how he was able to come on and ended up playing one singles by the end of the season, overtaking some of those senior guys as just a sophomore to play one singles in the NCAA tournament. And through, I believe it was about the final month of the season that he was playing all the way up there. So really able to rely on that senior leadership for this team. As you mentioned, Brandon, even when they weren't winning, they were keeping it close. We saw that in the NCAA tournament match between Grand Valley. All of those guys were right there in 3 sets within a couple of points. Just such a rock at the top of this lineup.
Absolutely, yeah. And Asunge finishing 20-7 overall. As the number 1 guy for the vast majority of the year overall, you could say. Yannick Alexander-Mador, these are all singles records, of course, 14-9. He was usually right around the 2-3 slot, but he could get moved around. Ben Lordy finishing 14-10 individually on the year. Jan Kapul, his doubles partner, right behind, 16-6 overall. Alessandro Santangelo, we had him on the show, good friend of ours, a big sports guy also as well. 16-6 in singles play. Eric Kovacs started the year at 5-8, but he was really starting to play a lot of those top guys at the 5 spot, 6 spot, and he would have certainly turned that record around in conference play if he hadn't got injured. But Kevin, 12-3 in his absence. So that's an absolutely huge feat for him individually. I mean, that just shows really how strong that team was individuals and doubles wise. You're seeing some of the same things as well in doubles play. I don't think there was a point that was lost in doubles on the road against GLIAC teams. That goes to show already the standard that they're setting to play at. But I think especially a lot of teams, we see a lot of these top guys, and especially when we watch the regionals, Brody, where you saw really good teams like Tiffin. You also had some others across the way, like McKendree, and especially some of the other teams like Drury on the other side of the bracket that were really top heavy, had a lot of really big names, and Wayne State even as well, with 2 of the top players in the country in Cedric Drenth as well as Daniel Gray. But a lot of the teams don't have the depth at the bottom. That's where they fall apart. This team has got it. When we're talking about our number 6 guy being a 12-3 and as a freshman, I mean, that just goes to show right there how good this team is.
Tons of promise.
Absolutely. And the best part about it is you got the value of the older guys in the team that can teach them through. So you got the raw talent, and then when you have that mentorship, it just makes it 10 times better.
Absolutely. So now we'll go over to the women's side here for all of the All GLIAC honorees for their successful season as well. I think when especially you look at this team and you saw obviously a little bit more of that top heavy, but a lot of movement here or there, I think certainly just goes to show how flexible this team was, as resilient as well. The Bulldogs had 4 honorees this past year for All GLIAC honors. Sophie Davitula, if I said that right, I think we've said it about 100 times on the show, and I'll probably said it differently every time, so I apologize, Sophie, for listening to this. And Morgan Waller, both first-team recipients. Ana Sofia Hernandez Ferrer was also a second-team choice, and then Waller and Hernandez claimed first-team in doubles, with Maria Fernandez Ferrer as an honorable mention as well there in the individual singles play. And of course, we forgot to mention the biggest of them all, you could say, Mark Doran, GLIAC Coach of the Year, for the job that he's done as well. But for the women's team as well, as I'm pulling up here to refresh the ITA site for all of the finishing results here, as we're starting to still get records finalized as their regionals are still going on at this moment. But I think when you look at this team, there's so much promise. And obviously the men's side is going to be losing quite a few players individually, especially at the top of the lineup. 3 or 4 of the top guys will be unfortunately leaving. And that's an absolute bummer. But I think that it certainly goes to show with this team that there is a lot of promise with all of the recruits coming in as well. So I'm going to hand it off to Brody and Joe here until I can get my singles to load.
We'll ramble just
a little bit here, a little technical difficulties, but I mean the women's team, I mean they have so much depth each and every year, so it's really just a reload for them and really continuing to fight.
Yeah, and the best part about it is you see it's really just the same thing as you're scrambling over there.
I am absolutely scrambling.
A whole bunch of stuff.
Totally relaxed.
But it's really just both sides. You know, you get that type of depth on the team, and you get a healthy mix of seniors and sophomores. I mean, both the Hernandez sisters, sophomores. You get Parker Nolan in there too, who's a junior, and now you have Sophie and Morgan who are going to be moving on. They're seniors, but they're able to share that knowledge that they have of the game. I mean, Morgan Wallen was Player of the Year a few years ago, and to be able to have that type of talent teach and mentor the younger people on that team, and then especially for the next group that's going to be coming in next year to learn from those who learned from the ones before them. It's just one of the best things about Ferris State's tennis on both sides for men and women, because Coach Doran has just been able to really establish that team culture of, support, encouragement, as well as just winning. And that's the best part about it.
I think one thing that Coach Doran does exceedingly well, Joe, and you can either agree with or disagree with me on this, but he does a really good job of elevating the play of his seniors, but also finding a way to get the best out of some of those juniors and sophomores, and then integrate the freshmen into the lineup by the time the season closes. I think that for both squads, really, the men's and the women's this year, you saw that big time for the women after their slow start. They really relied on some of that senior presence when they got players healthy towards the end of the year, and it wouldn't have been possible without some of those younger players like the Hernandez sisters stepping up and playing to their potential down in, through the rest of the lineup.
And he got us donuts that one. So that was really cool too.
That's the true shout out.
Yeah, that's the true shout out for Coach Doran.
Yeah.
I was looking over there, Brandon.
We're still scrambling here, but I think we can really look forward to this year, as we can also probably just go into, while we have the time, we can go into the individual breakouts. I mean, it's really hard to pick one. I know we were talking about that with softball last year, but I think with a lot of the younger players on both the men's and the women's side, obviously some sophomores and freshmen in the starting 6, those are going to be probably easy ones to pick. But I mean, you can just see the promise of some of the seniors for getting better, and you wish you could have them for 5-6 years, just to see it, because they're top players in the country, and we're talking to them like, oh yeah, I can be better with my footwork, I can be better with my shot placement. I mean, you're talking like all these little things, and it's just so hard to do. But as far as individuals, I think we maybe go one women's and one men's, maybe real quick, and then just keep her going here.
That's a smart idea.
Okay, so Joe, you had honors last time. I'll give you the choice if you want to go first or divert.
I'll give it to Brody.
Okay.
So I think on the men's side, obviously we're going to look to see what happens with Eric when he comes back from an injury. But he's such a good player already. He's established that baseline. I don't really think it's fair to call him a breakout player. And it's also tough to say that Kevin could be a breakout player, because he kind of already did, right? But can he take that next step? Can he becomes the guy that leads this team at that one single spot? We'll see. But one guy I'm keeping my eye on is Lorenzo. I really think that he was a good recruit that Coach Doran brought in, a guy that can play some very impressive singles. Can he step up and be that 2 or 3 behind the Kovacs brothers in the next couple of years? And of course, Alessandro is still there. He is a junior, however, so maybe just 1 year left for him. And then on the women's side, we talked about the Hernandez sisters, but I think that they have to become those star players for this team. Morgan's done a really good job over the past couple of years being that true rock at the top of the lineup, but the 2 sisters, Anna and Maria, need to find a way to become nationally ranked players in the top 20, top 30 type of rankings to really take this team to the next level over the couple of years in the future.
Absolutely. So I finally got him, guys.
Hey, good job,
It took
man.
5
Persistence
minutes.
is key.
Second.
Let's go.
ITA site was killing me, but we actually got it done. So very, very excited with that. I think the number one that I'm going to pick on the men's side, I think is going to be Alessandro. He's a guy that's been very consistent. He's been a rock. He's a very emotionally driven player, and I think that can really bring a lot of real good promise for him moving up, because he's going to be moving up in the lineup. There's no doubt about it when it comes comes to this team upcoming. And I think you look at a lot of the individual players that he's played against this year, and you see nothing but good things. And I think that's really a huge thing. I mean, 16-6 in singles. He was also really good in doubles. He was 12-10 with all of his partners. But I think especially when you saw what he did with the Sunge 7-4 down the stretch, and I believe the only ones that he lost to as well was against Michigan Tech, who's got really good doubles pairings as well as Purdue Northwest. And that was really early on in the season. So I think he's got a really, really bright future. And I mean, how about finishing the year on a high note? He ended up winning, I believe I'm counting as I am reading here, 9 straight in singles. 9 straight. Last loss was against Surreal Columback against Tiffin on March 16th. And that was a number, I believe he was ranked in the top 50 at the time. So Alessandro is going to be a guy that's going to be a number 2, number 3 for sure next year. Obviously, it's going to depend on the personnel, how it goes, but I think he's going to be a guy that's going to step up, and I think he's going to really make a difference.
Hey, good points for you, Brandon. Way to go. For me, I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Brody said. I think Kevin is going to be another one. I mean, you already saw him with Freshman of the Year, and you talk about pressure of being able to kind of keep that momentum going for next year. But the thing is, he already knows pressure. He had to come in with not a lot of experience, coming in for his brother, a lot of expectations, and he was able to blow him out of the water. So I think next year he's just going to keep that going on. Player of the Year, maybe, who knows? But I think
fingers crossed.
I don't want to say too much right now, but I still think for him to be able to come in with that type of pressure and be able to perform like that, it's just going to keep on going. As for him being a freshman too, it's pretty huge as well. And I think for the women's side too, you got to watch out for Parker Nolan. She's been a little bit younger on the team, but she already has shown some leadership as well. As I mean, when we talked to her on the show a few months ago, actually. I mean, she just showed incredible maturity in her approach to the game too. So I think she's going to be able to take a huge step up for next season, and it's going to be a really solid spot.
Absolutely. So we'll kind of go back into it here with the women's individuals. We'll start with Parker Nolan because obviously Joe just mentioned it. It seems like a fitting time. Only 5-12 in singles. She really had a lot of tough pairings overall this year down there at the bottom, and that's a really spot that the GLIAC has really improved with, as we've mentioned for the third time, how much better it's been. 8-17 Morgan Waller was in singles this year. Sophie finishing at a mark that was 10-2. She was fantastic overall in singles. Fernanda Hernandez Ferrer, mouthful, 13-11, and then her sister Anna right behind as well at 10-15 on the season, and then Kennedy Dumas, who was in and out of the lineup, finishing 9-12, and then also mentioning Catherine Ernest, who was in the lineup as well here and there, finishing 6-8. You're seeing a lot of sub 500 marks, but there's so much improvement for how good the GLIAC is that this team can show. So my pick on the women's side as well. I'm probably going to pick Kennedy Dumas. I think she really has a lot of great potential. We saw her play very competitively in a lot of these top tier team matches. I mean, she won against Bucknell. I mean, she won against Illinois Springfield, McKendree, who was a team that was really good this year as a program. And she consistently played a lot of these tough matches. I mean, a lot of them going into 3 sets. I believe at least 4 out of the last 6 were in 3-set matches. And that just goes to show. And she didn't finish the year as far as an injury concerned. So I think she could be one that especially bounces back. We saw what Morgan Waller did this year. I think she could be a really big bounce back candidate coming up.
Honorable mention to Catherine Ernest, who I believe at the ESPYs was in the running for Bulldog Female Rookie of the Year.
I believe so, yeah.
Keep an eye out for her as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, did you pick a men's player?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I missed Kevin. Oh, yes, it was Kevin, of course. So
Can he handle the pressure?
Ooh,
Player of the Year.
I always say pressure either makes diamonds or bursts pipes. It's up to you if you got to head on over to the jeweler or the plumber. I don't know.
I think he's going to be headed to the jeweler.
I think so too.
Probably.
Yes, but that's our pick. That's our recap for tennis, guys. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on or WBRN.com as well as go hit up our friends at Dazos Digital if you need help as well. Check out our YouTube. We got best bits coming out, folks. So be sure to subscribe for that so you don't miss out. Any last remarks, gentlemen?
Nope.
Another great episode. No surprise, though.
Way to go, guys.
Only bangers only on this show. But until next time here on Behind the Bulldogs.
Take care, everybody.